Okay, so where we were is at the bottom of Nun Tes Amud we're doing today, Samach Lamed Aleph. Just to mention two things. One, in terms of the the Yerushalmi that I mentioned yesterday, if you look at the Yerushalmi that we had talked about at the top of the page about Arei Chambet Kufas, and I said that the Yerushalmi suggests that you should make the Berachas Achama not in a situation like we have every 28 years, but rather after a few days of having rain and then seeing the sun be Moisag Shamim, that makes sense for the Yerushalmi because it puts all the Gemaras together. In other words, it puts together the Gemara about a Rei Chambetz Kufasa. It puts it together with the idea of a Rei Rikia B'Taharasa, the Gemara right before in the Testament off at the bottom, that somebody who sees the Rakia in clarity. And over there, Abaya said that specifically we're talking about a situation of Kiyasa Mitra Kulilalia, when you have rain that came all night, would stop for us this, and then you have a wind that came along and made it the Rakia clear. So in that situation, since the Yerushalmi is bunching together these various cases, so it makes sense. That's talking about one thing, which is there was a lot of rain and now it's clear. But in the Bavli, where it separates it out and puts it in different cases, Chametz Kufasa is different than the case of Harei Rekia B'Tarasa. And you have Abai giving two different reasons. One of them being about the situation of Kiyasa Mitra Kulilelia, and then his reason by the Cham of Kolchav Chashanan, you can't say the same thing. So if you want to adopt the approach of the Yerushalmi, that's one thing. But to say that the Bavli should be understood like the Yerushalmi, which is what I suggested yesterday, based upon the way Rabbeinu Chananel was learning, I'm not so sure that it works so easily in the Bavli. That was point number one. Point number two, we didn't do the second thesis here on the page on test. So just to mention quickly, that Tesis says in the second thesis of Hasam, Tesis points out that Behuadin Ishtay Ubanav Imay, that when you make the bracha of Shechiyanu, you're not making it as a yachid. We said Hatayva Meitev is a situation of partnership. Look at the bottom thesis of Rabbi Yochanan. We're not going to have a chance to go through all inside, but at the bottom thesis of Rabbi Yochanan on the page, he says that the bracha of Hatayva Meitev in the Bavli means that you have a partner, but in the Yerushalmi it's not mashma the same. But in the thesis of Hasam, thesis says very clearly that when it comes to Shechiyanu, Ein Mevarach Yachid Al Shinu Yain Le'ashkan Yachid Shem Mevarach Shechiyanu, Rak Achat Yachid doesn't make Shechiyanu except if something is new. V'chein Kol Pri Chadash Kisha'achol Mevarach Shechiyanu, and if you eat a new fruit, you make a Shechiyanu. So in other words, Taisa seems to be suggesting it's not a question of partners, but Yachid is not going to make a Shechiyanu on the Shinu of Yain, because we don't find the Yachid making a bracha of Shechiyanu unless something is new. And the new thing is like a new suit or a situation of a new fruit, things like that. Now, to start what we are doing today. So we had finished the Gemara yesterday by the two dots, so we're one line up from the bottom on the test, and we had mentioned that Bana Bayis Chodesh V'Kana Kelim Chadoshim, somebody bought a new house. If somebody made a new, well, I said bought a new house. The Gemara specifically says built a new house, but it could also be someone purchased a house, because the second case of V'Kana Kelim Chadoshim, if somebody's buying new kelim, new utensils, what exactly kelim means can be discussed further. But if you look at the Taisus of Rabbi Yochanan says, V'Aimari, in the middle of the Taisus says, V'Aimari dafka bebegadim chashuvim. It should be nice begadim, dumi the bayis chadash, like a new house. So nakat kelim chadashim. Avol she'enam chashuvim, but if it's not nice, in other words, it's just regular. So Taisus gives a specific example. K'may min alim, v'an pliyais, right, like shoes or slippers, v'chaluk, or a shirt. You don't have to make a bracha of a shechiyanu on a situation where you're just buying regular things. Now, I know that the shoes these days can be the most fancy of the clothing, so maybe that's different. But at least in Taisus days, that wasn't necessarily the case. And I want to now learn the other way. That is to say that even if you didn't build the house, but you only bought the house, that would be at least as good as the Kelim Chadashim, so you could also make the bracha there as well. Okay, So now we have to hold cup the first part of the Gemara today, but it's after that we go back into the Agaritas. The Gemara has a machlok. It says, "My boy, by his question, kind of chadash." Remember, Rav Huna lo shana el she'ein leki yitzibehen. Rav Huna says that this is only true that you have to make the bracha of shechiyanu only if you don't have anything like it. But if you have something like it, then you do not have to make the bracha. That is to say, according to Rav Huna, we can imagine a situation a person can have X, whatever that kli is. Let's say a person has one of these beautiful seder plates. We just finished Pesach, so a person has a beautiful seder plate that he got as an inheritance from his zayda, and then now he's buying another one. That situation where somebody's buying one but he already has one is the question that we're discussing. According to Rav Huna, lo shana el she'ein la. Situations if we don't have anything. Avol yesh like yitzibehen. Let's say you had one, but you didn't purchase it. You got it in an inheritance. According to Rav Huna, you're not going to make a bracha. Avol yesh like yitzibehen ein tzarich levach. Once you have it, doesn't mean that's how you got it. You didn't buy it. It wasn't your own money. You got it as a present. You found it as a mitzvah. Whatever. As long as you didn't have one, you make a bracha. If you did have one, no matter how you have it, you don't make a bracha. If you have it, but according to the way we're explaining Rabbi Yochanan, is if you have one, meaning not that you bought one, you got one, as Rashi says, miyerusha. You got it through an inheritance, but you have it. So long as you have it, you have to make a bracha. Okay, so again, according to the machlokes here, is a situation if you have it already that you didn't purchase. According to Rav Huna, if you have it already, you didn't purchase, you do not make a bracha. According to Rabbi Yochanan, you do make a bracha. Says the Gemara, top of the page now on Samach Mechlal. What we see from here is the chikana v'chaz of v'kana, divriyakal and tzarchel. So everybody agrees that if you already purchased it once, right? You bought the kaira, you have a seder plate. Now your son was coming, so you're buying another one. So in that situation, you do not have to make another bracha according to everybody. Why? Because you already purchased it. The machlokes comes out if you didn't purchase it. If you got the first seder plate from an inheritance, the first esrog box, you got it from an inheritance, right? The first Megillah, you got everything you got it from an inheritance. According to this, you would not have to make a bracha. According to Rabbi Yochanan, you would. Now we have a second version of this. I remember according to Rav Huna, when you have to make a bracha, is only teaching us in a situation of where you didn't buy it and then repurchase it. Avokana, right? But if you already purchased one and then you go out now and buy another one, then ein tzarich levar. So in other words, according to this version, the way Rav Huna is learning is that if you have it in your possession, how did you have it in your possession? You inherited it. So you inherited it. And now you're buying another one. So according to this version of Rav Huna, what? You do not have to make a bracha, right? But if you inherited it, you would have to make a bracha, right? According to this version of Rav Huna, is if you purchased it, you don't have to make another bracha, but if you inherited it, you do. However, even if you already bought it, now you're buying another, you still have to make the bracha of shechiyan. So Mechlal says that everybody agrees, even Rav Huna, that if you had it in this version, right? In this version, if you had it, but only via inheritance, not from a purchase, so according to everybody, you would have to make the bracha. Is that clear? So in other words, in the first version of the Gemara, according to Rav Huna and Rabbi Yochanan, machlokes there is if you have it via inheritance. According to Rav Huna, if you have it via inheritance, you didn't purchase it, so you don't have to make a bracha. According to Rabbi Yochanan, you do. And the second version, according to the machlokes, is if everybody agrees that if you already had it, but you didn't purchase it, you have to make a bracha. The question is, if you purchased it, according to Rav Huna, you don't have to make another bracha. And according to Rabbi Yochanan, if you purchase a new one, you have to make another bracha. Good? Now the Gemara wants to say a brisa and then say which lashon makes more sense. It says the Gemara, Meisvei, we have a brisa, but if you are building a new house and you don't have a similar one, kelim chadashim ve'ein laim, somebody's buying a new kelim and doesn't have anything similar, ve'ein lakiyatzeh be'em tzarich levar. Then he has to make a bracha. According to Rameir, says the Tanakama says that if the only situation they have to make a bracha is only if you don't have something similar. But if you already have something similar, that's what Rameir holds. Rabbi disagrees and says, no, regardless, you have to make a bracha. That is to say, it's coming out now that this understanding of the Gemara before we get to Rav Huna and Rabbi Yochanan, that we have Machlokes Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda. And over here, Rabbi Meir says that if you don't have something similar, you have to make a bracha. Rabbi Yehuda, even if you have something similar, you do have to make a bracha. Good. Now says the Gemara, what does this make more sense like? Says the Rabbi Shalom Lishna Kama. It makes sense according to the first version of the Machlokes Rabbi Huna Rabbi Yochanan. That makes sense. Why Bishlam Lishna Kama Rabbi Huna Rabbi Meir Rabbi Yochanan Rabbi Yehuda? Then you can end up having Rabbi Huna like Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yochanan like Rabbi Yehuda. Why? Because the understanding of Rav Huna in the first version is that if you have it, no matter how you got it, you don't have to make a bracha. So now let's read Rav Meir. Rav Meir is saying essentially the same, right? If you have a situation where it's ein loy ke'etziba mikol makom, right, then you don't have to make a bracha. But if you have one, how you got it, I don't care. Then you don't have to make a bracha. So according to this, if you already inherited it and now you're buying one, so you wouldn't have to make a bracha. According to Rav Meir, and Rav Huna is saying the same. And Rabbi Yochanan ends up saying like Rabbi Yehuda, because Rabbi Yochanan is saying that mikol makom, I don't care, you got it. So long as you have it, I'm sorry, I should restate that. According to Rabbi Yochanan, if you have it already, but you didn't purchase it, so according to Rabbi Yochanan, you have to make a bracha. And that's what Rabbi Yehuda is saying over here. According to Rabbi Yehuda, you have to make a bracha if you already have it. So Rabbi Yochanan, as long as you didn't purchase it, which will be what Rabbi Yochanan is saying as well, so it works. Elo Lishna Basra, but according to the second version of the Gemara, so where Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Huna are arguing on a situation where everybody agrees that if you have it already, you have to make another bracha as long as you didn't purchase it. What the machlokes is between Rabbi Huna and Rabbi Yochanan is if you didn't purchase, if you did purchase it, then according to Rabbi Huna, you don't make another bracha. According to Rabbi Yochanan, you still make another bracha when you buy the second one. So then we have a problem. Elolishna Basra, but according to the second version of the machlokes between Rabbi Huna and Rabbi Yochanan, we have a problem. Why? Because Bishlam Rabbi Huna. It could make sense that we should say Rabbi Huna would be like Rabbi Yehuda. In other words, according to Rabbi Yehuda, you have to make a bracha if you have it and you went out and purchased another one. That makes sense because Rabbi Huna says, according to the second version, that if you inherited it and went out to buy another one, then you still have to make a bracha. So it comes out that Rabbi Huna would hold like Rabbi Yehuda. El Rabbi Yochanan, but according to Rabbi Yochanan, who says that even if you buy it and now you buy another one, you have to make a bracha. So who's that coming out like? El Rabbi Yochanan, the Amr came out like Rabbi Meir, like Rabbi Yehuda. It's not going to come out like anybody. So it says the Gemara Milcha Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan would tell you who I didn't Rabbi Yehuda kana v'chaz v'kana nami tzarich levarach. So Rabbi Yochanan would tell you that when Rabbi Yehuda says benkach ubenkach tzarich levarach, it's not a response to Rabbi Meir. That simply in a situation where you own it and now you buy one that you have to make a bracha. But no, even if you owned one and now you're buying another one, even then Rabbi Yehuda would say that you have to make another bracha. So again, Amel Rabbi Yehuda. I'm sorry, Amel Rabbi Yochanan, who I didn't tell Rabbi Yehuda, kana v'chaz v'kana nam tzarich levarach. And this that he's coming out and arguing with Rabbi Meir in the case of Yeshla, meaning not that he bought it, but he inherited it. Why is Rabbi Yehuda arguing with Rabbi Meir in this case? Right? If he holds much stronger that even if you bought it, you have to make another one, then in this situation with Rabbi Meir, it's not really the full machlokes. It's not the full strength of Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Because according to Rabbi Meir, the whole argument is in a situation where you have one, but you didn't purchase it, and now you're buying the first time a new one. So that's where Rabbi Meir is saying that you don't have to make the bracha. And Rabbi Yehuda is saying no, that you do have to make a bracha. But says the Gemara, according to this situation, where I'm sorry to say that again, that according to our mayor, if somebody has a bana by a Scottish, if he doesn't have one, or then only then is it tzarich levarach. But if he has it, right? If he has it, then he doesn't have to make another bracha. Of course, if he bought it, now he's buying a second one, he doesn't have to make another bracha. But even if he had it from an inheritance, he doesn't have, or he found a mitzvah, he doesn't have to make a bracha now when he's buying the second one. So according to this, Rabbi Yehuda is not merely arguing in that case where if you had it in your house because of a present and then you bought one, then you have to make a bracha. Rabbi Yehuda is arguing even if you already bought one and now you're buying a second one, you have to make another bracha. So this is the opinion of the way Rabbi Yochanan is learning. So why didn't Rabbi Yehuda make that clear? It sounds like he's only arguing in the case of Rabbi Meir, which is a situation where a person just inherited or had a mitzvah, in which case he doesn't see the full strength of Rabbi Yehuda here, like Rabbi Yochanan. So why does the Gemara not focus on it? Says the Gemara, And the reason that the Gemara is arguing in a situation where it sounds like the person inherited or had a mitzvah or something to that effect, rather than purchasing it, even though Rabbi Yehuda holds that in both cases the person would have to make a new bracha, is like to show you the strength of Rameir Shita that feel kind of that even if a person purchased it and has it, ain't that he doesn't have to make another bracha. The kol shekain kana v'chaz v'kana, right? Regardless of how a person got it, whether or not he purchased it or whether or not he inherited it, he never has to make a second bracha, right? The hadiyacha kechad v'amer I feel kana v'yeshloi ain't tzarich levarich v'kolshkin kana v'chazav v'kana the ain't tzarich levarich. The fair thing, okay, I understand that you want to show him the kechad v'amer, but why not the reverse? Why not say that the machlokes is not in a situation where you inherited or had a mitzvah of it and then you bought one, which shows you that Rameir said you never make a bracha. Why not say the case is where you went out, purchased it, and then purchased another one? That shows you that Rabbi Huda is such a machmir that he requires you to make a bracha. Why not make that case clear? And in that situation, you don't have to make a bracha of Rabbi Yehuda holds even over there you have to make a bracha, which would show the real full koyach of Rabbi Yehuda. The Gemara koyach that Torah adaflei. It's showing you the koyach that Torah. What does it mean the koyach that Torah? The koyach that Torah of the koyach the hetera that Rameir is not machayev you to be mavar. In other words, what is the heter and what's the iser? Or what's the heter and what's the what's more chamer and what's more makel? Right? The Gemara tells us in Beitza right in the beginning on that base, kerch that ter adif. And if you look at Rashi over there, it's a very famous Rashi. Rashi says anybody has the kerch to be machmer. Doesn't take a big genius to be machmer. Being machmer is very simple. To be makel, that's a challenge. You have to have bright appliances for that. So over here, the Gemara is telling us why do we want to say why are we stressing the case which is not exemplifying the full shita of Rabbi Yehuda? Why are we showing the shita of Rabbi Meir? Right? And we know the Gemara in Erevim and Vav told us that you have machlokes between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. You have Pascal like Rabbi Yehuda. So why are we exemplifying Rabbi Meir if the real halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda anyways? So on that, the Gemara is saying it's because karech that Torah adif. Karech that Torah adif means that we're being more makel on you. What's the more makel on you? We're more makel on you, then we're not requiring you to make a bracha. Right? So Rameir is saying you don't have to make a bracha, not only in a situation where you bought it and now you bought another one, then you don't have to make a bracha. Rameir is saying even if you didn't buy it, you inherited it, you found the mitzvah, whatever it is, somehow it's in your possession, and now you're buying it for the first time, you don't even have to make a bracha over there. That's the kerech that Torah Rameir, and that's what we want to focus on, because that's always a more impressive thing than the kerech of being machmer. Slach points out an interesting note, which is there happens to be a machlokes about Safek Brachos Lahako. Right? What does Safek Brachos Lahako mean? Safek Brachos Lahako, according to most Paiskim, not all, but most Paiskim means what? Safek Brachos Lahako means, therefore you don't make the bracha. You want to be makel on Safek Brachos. So therefore what? We don't require you to make a bracha. That's normally what it means, according to most Paiskim. So if Safek Brachos Lahako means that you normally are therefore machmer and you don't make the bracha, that's what means Safek Brachos Lahako. So it comes out, it's very odd, it's backwards. So the kerech that Torah adif we're trying to show means that you don't make the bracha, which is accentuating the point of Rameir. But if you say Safek Brachos Lahako, means that if you don't make a bracha, that's the chumrah. So then kerech that Torah adif here is taking on the backwards opinion. Right? Because that's actually the chumrah. Safek Brachos Lahako, we're machmer, you don't make the bracha. So it's a little bit of an odd situation. So the Tzlach wants to point out that maybe it's because this bracha of Shechianu is not part of Safek Brachos Lahako, or maybe will be a riot like the other opinion. I'm not sure. Okay, we got to move on. So the next Gemara tells us the Varach ala Roh, right? So the Gemara, the Mishnah told us two things about it, right? If we look back on Nandala for 1 second, if you look back on Nandala in the Mishnah told us 2 points. Number one, it had told us a point. Mevarach ala ra me'ein al hatev, al hatev me'ein al ra. You make a bracha on bad tidings like on good, and on good like on bad. What exactly did that mean? The Mishnah further explained as follows. The Mishnah says, "Chayiv adam levarach ala ra kishem shem mevarach al hateva." Person has to make a bracha on bad the same way he makes a bracha on good. But it turns out that the brachas that one makes are different. And so now we explain. Right, the bracha on good, the bracha on bad is dayana emes. So the Gemara explains now as follows. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. I apologize. We have one more thing to do before we jump to this Gemara, and that is the Taisis on back on the Testament base. For Rabbi Yechon, we've already done the middle and the end, but we skipped the beginning. So who do we passing like? We have two listeners and we have two arguments, right? We have arguments between Rabbi Huna and Rabbi Yechon according to two versions. The Lishna Kama, the Lishna Basha, and we have the price of Rabbi Yehuda. So who do we pass like? It says we pass like Rabbi Yechanan. Why do we pass like Rabbi Yechanan? Because the machlokes between Rav and Rabbi Yechanan, the halacha is like Rabbi Yechanan. And Kol Shekain, there's Taisvis, although the gears is a little bit choppy, but you have to look on the side. Kol Shekain l'gabe Rav Huna. Why? Kol Shekain l'gabe Rav Huna? Because of the fact that Rav Huna was a Talmud of Rav. Now, if you remember, we had this already. Taisis on Lamed Tesam Beis, and Taisis Memo and Beis. Taisis told us the explanation of this. Normally, if you look in the Taisis on Lamed Tesam Beis, it was Taisis Dever Masel Mevarich, and the Taisis Memo Beis was the top Taisis for Rabbi Yechanan. If you look in both of those Taisis says Halacha Machlokes between Yechanan and Rav, also like Rabbi Yechanan. Right, this also came up on Chav Chesed Beis as well. Whenever you have Machlokes Rav and Rabbi Yechanan, also like Rabbi Yechanan. And it says Taisis, even though normally we say Halacha Kibasroi, and we know that Rav Huna was a Talmud of Rav, so why don't we say that? It should be like Rav Huna of Rabbi Yechanan, Halacha like Basroi. Says we don't say Halacha like Basroi with regards to Rav Huna because he's a Talmud of Rav. Basroi means like, generationally later, not just simply like the Talmud of the next guy. That's not considered Basroi enough, and so therefore we don't consider a machlekes of Rav Yechanan and Rav Huna like a machlekes with the Basroi. So therefore it's like a machlekes with Rav, and therefore it's like Rabbi Yechanan. And therefore, over here as well, since we have a machlokes between Rabbi Yechanan, that a person has to make a bracha according to the Lishna Basra, which would fit even with Rabbi Meir, according to the way we've just explained, means that even if you bought a nice tie or a nice suit, and now you're buying another nice tie or a nice suit, you could still make a bracha. All right, moving on. So now, again, we just explained. So it says, what's an example of this situation? It says, hey, chidami. What are we talking about? You're going to Shako Bidka Ba'are. There was a dam that was breached and it flooded his land. Now, what happens when a dam floods your land with water? It destroys your current crop, says Rashi. Right? Mechabelas Tavua Shal Shana Zu. Right? And therefore you have to make a bracha, Baruch Daina Emes. But it's also depositing the silt, right? The mud, Rashi says, the pit, the butts, right? Which is going to carry all these incredible nutrients, and it's going to really make sure that your crop next year is going to be fantastic. So maybe it's a good thing. Maybe you should make a bracha on Teva Meitiv. We already saw before that when somebody dies and he's getting a big Yerusha, you say Baruch Dayan Emes and you say a Teva Meitiv. We don't say that you do both here. We just say you say Baruch Dayan Emes. Why? Because that's what's happening now, and in the future, whatever is good is attenuated. It's not now, so if you don't have to make a bracha of Teva Meitiv, just a bracha of Dayan Emes. So again, somebody has a dam breach in his land, even though eventually it will be very good. The maskara shirton, right? It's going to bring in the shirton. Again, I'm not exactly sure what that is, but it is some sort of silt that's going to really help the ground to be fertilized. The shivchan, it's going to really enhance it. Hashtam but right now it's bad. But since it's bad, now you say bracha and emes. Well, I'll tell you what's the reverse situation. You make a bracha on good, which is good now, even if it may not be good later. What's the situation? If you're going to ashkach metzia, right? You found a very valuable lost object. So even though it's really inherently bad for him, why you show him Malka when the kingdom hears about it? They're going to take it from you. Now, however, it's good because now it's a fantastic thing. You found something very valuable, you can utilize it, etc. Even though in the end it might be bad for you because they're going to come and take it away and confiscate it and tax you, whatever. But for now, it is a good thing. So if you make a bracha about Teva Meitiv, just to note that the kingdom coming along and taking along your lost object is not something unheard of. The Gemara in Yerushalmi B'Mitzia in Parak Beis told us a story about Alexander Mike, but also the Gemara in Tamid Lamed Beis of Beis
The Gemara over there says that Alexander went to go visit the kingdom in Africa, and he saw various wondrous things. So here we went to some kingdom. I have no idea where it was. Also, Gemara Sanhedrin, Sadi Aleph. Also, Alexander. He went to various places. The Gemara in Yuma, Samach Tessel. Alexander the Great, being one of these guys who went around the world conquering, went to a lot of different places. So in this story, I'm not sure where it takes place, but it sounds like the kind of a story like the Gemara in Talmud. That's why in my head I always think of it as that, even though the Gemara says in Yerushalmi Mitzvah that it took place in a place called Katzia. I have no idea where that is. But wherever it is, the Gemara says that he came to a place and he said, I want to see you guys judge. It's also very similar to the Gemara, like I say, in Talmud. There's a lot of gold in the story. In any event, what happened is two people come before the judge and they say, the king, whoever it was, and say, hey, I bought a piece of land, and in the land I found a huge treasure. And the other guy says, I sold him the land, and whatever was in the land, so it's not mine. It's his treasure. It reminds us of the Yerushalmi, right? Where also there, Babatzia, where Shimon Shetach bought his Talmina bought him a donkey because they didn't want him to be, without a car, and it came with a big jewel in the saddle. So he says, "Am I a barbarian? I'm not keeping it. I don't care about what it says about the lost objects of going. I'm giving it back. I'm not a barbarian." So over here, they're fighting by the king. So the king says, "Do you have a son? Do you have a daughter? Marry them together. Give them the mitzvah as a wedding present." And Shalom Al Yisrael. Well, he didn't say that, but whatever he said. So Alexander is like stunned. So the king says, "Then why so upset? How would you do in your country?" He says, "What? I'd kill each one. Take the treasure for the kingdom." He says, "Does it rain by you?" He says, "Yeah." "Do you have food?" "Yeah." He says, "Oh, it must be all in the schos of the animals, because clearly it's not in the schos of the human beings." And that's what we say. The pasuk says that Hashem is saving the humans and the animals. It must be in the schos of the animals, he said. So you say, okay, well, this is very funny, and it's not relevant. This is totally relevant. And in fact, it is the law in America nowadays. Imagine you were going scuba diving, I don't know, and you found a big Spanish galley, and you said, "Oh, it's a great treasure." You start taking up all the gold for yourself. You know what's going to happen when America hears about it, or Spain, or Mexico, whoever the country is? They say, "That's mine." Any major treasure that you find, whether it's in America or other places, the government can say, "No, no, that's mine." Right? So it's not like an unheard of thing. If you find a major treasure, there's ways for the law to say, "No, no, that's mine." So that's why he's more saying that maybe today it sounds like a good thing, and if you can get some of the coins, use some of it before they find out. But if they find out, you're done. If you look online, you can see very fascinating disputes about it. There was like a guy who found a whole. I think he may still be in jail today. There's a guy who was in jail almost 10 years. I didn't check, but I remember reading a story. A guy, he found the shipwreck and wouldn't say anything where it is, and basically was put into jail to make him in America. I think to force him to divulge where this treasure was, and he would. And he may still be in jail, rotting in jail. I don't know. All right, continues the Gemara. So we're up to now. If a woman was pregnant, that's a stupid tefillah. Why? Because it's a tefillah shav. Why? Because your wife's already pregnant. It's already obvious what the child is. A zachar in a cave. It's not changing. Is it not going to help to ask for rachamim for the changing the sex of the child? Right? The gender of the child is fluid. Okay, that's a joke, but we should be able to daven for such things. Says the Gemara, Maser Rav Yosef, based upon a brisa. It says the bas. Right, and after that, Dina gave birth to a girl. What does it mean? Va'acha what? What does it mean afterwards she gave? Obviously, the pasuk shot is va'acha what? After she gave birth to the 6 boys, she gave birth to a girl. That's the va'acha. But it doesn't say va'acha by any of the other kids, so the Gemara wants to darshan it. What does it mean? Amarav va'acha shadon aleya done din ba'atzma. After she adjudicated a din for herself. For Amar Yud Beis Shvatim Asin Latzis Miyag. Everyone knows that Yaakov was supposed to have 12 Shvatim. Remember, how do we know that Leah knew this? Back on the Gemara, we're almost finished brachas. We got to keep on showing how brachas is all connected. Remember the Gemara before we had it. The Gemara says on Zayin Bates that Leah came along and was Maida. She was the first person to be Maida. Hapam Eides Hashem. What do you mean Hapam Eides Hashem? Says Rashi, if she was the Brachot Kodesh, she Yaakov Mamish was Shratim. She already knew that everyone knew Yaakov is going to have 12 kids. So now, when she already had 6 kids and she's pregnant again, Asin Latzis Miyakov, many. I already had 6 for Abba, not Shvachas, and there's going to be 4 from the Shvachas. Right? They already had 2 each. Sorry, that's 10. And Zezach, if this new kid is going to be another boy, she's not even going to be like one of the Shvachas. She's only going to have 1 child. So the baby turned into a girl. She never took a Shemadina. So therefore, it's a proof that what? It's a proof that you can change the gender of a child. Says the more. This is really a proof to say that it's not a tefillah shav. No, don't bring a riot from an ace that you are what are you calling that you are gonna now start davening for it in a normative way. Now we daven for nisim all the time. We daven for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to save the Jewish people the same way He saved us in times past. But that's really public tefillas. That's not a situation of davening for a person. By the way, the Gemara tells us in Shabbos Lamed Beis. I think Lamed Beis or Lamed Gimel. I'm forgetting now exactly. The Gemara tells us there that somebody who gets a nace happen, knocking his chiyosef, right, takes off some of your schusim. It's not necessarily a wise thing to be davening for nisim, right? Because every time you get something that happens to you, that ma'aser nisim is going to be taking away from your zechus. Obviously, if it's a situation where you're davening for the Jewish people, it's not being knocking from your zechus. Of course, that's not going to be the same issue. But the Gemara is pointing out that the tefillah shaf, the daven that your baby should be a male after your wife's already pregnant, because of the fact that would be requiring an ace, and that would just be a foolish then tefillah. By Sam, another answer of the Gemara is Maisa delay the situation where Leah davened to have her gender of her child be a girl was within the first 40 days of pregnancy. For instance, should daven that the zera should not be masriach, meaning that she'll be able to be impregnating. From 3 to 40 days, daven should be a male. From 3 months to on, from 40 days to 3 months, you should daven that it shouldn't be a sandal, meaning if the wife becomes pregnant again. I'm not sure that that's so frankly possible medically, but whatever the case may be, we're not using these gemaras to talk about the science and the halacha that we have these fundamental topics throughout here, right? In terms of the dreams, in terms of the winds, all these are that topic. I'm avoiding it for now. We will one day do that whole thing on a Shavuos night, but not for the moment. In any event, so from 40 days to 3 months, or maybe for a whole year. So then you daven it shouldn't be a sandal because that's a type of fish that basically a child who gets when the wife becomes pregnant with the second one, then the first one will be destroyed, and so it'll look like a sandal fish. Right? From 3 to 6 months, actually a nafel, shidam that shouldn't be a nafel. From the 6 months to 9 months, shidam that it should come out b'shalom b'hani rachami. So the Gemara says, does it work racham to daven between the first day and the 40th day that it should be a male? Does that actually work? So we have our parsha, right? We learned the parsha this week. Ish Masriya Tchila, you let us in the cave, but Ish Masriya Tchila, you let us zachar. Isn't it determined at the moment of conception about who is Masriya first? Isha Kisazriya, you all the zachar. So everything more hakam askin and guncha Israel shneim bevas achas. A situation where somebody who's Masriya together with the wife at the same exact moment. So in that situation, you could daven that it should be a zachar. Look in the Ramban in this week's parsha, where he has the machlokes of the philosophers, the Greeks. They talk about the Perich versus Chazal. Look at the Gemara Nidid Laman Alpha and Beis, where it discusses the different ways that rabbis had to ensure that the wives gave birth to male children. But for our purposes now, the Gemara is just simply saying that within the first 40 days, there is a possibility that one could change the gender. Whether that's true in our science today is obviously beside the point. It's not true in the science of today, but it's irrelevant. For our purposes now, what that shows us is that during the first 40 days, it's not fully, the child is not fully developed, and therefore, as a practical matter, has a lot of implications in relation to allowing abortions or taking medicine to ensure that the fetus will be, not be able to come to term. Those heterim are on this basis. Okay, we can't do any more with no time. So it says the somebody's coming along on the road. Hill was coming along on the road, and he heard shouting in his hometown. Basically, he said, I'm sure it's not in my house. And about him, the pasuk says, right, from a scary news, he was not afraid. Why? His heart was full of his confidence his belief in the Rebbeinu Shalom. Amar Rava Kol Hechad the Rashis Laikra Meresh L'Sefer Midrash Mesefer L'Resh Midrash. You could dash this pasuk in both from the top to bottom and from the bottom to top. Meresh L'Sefer Midrash. You can dash it from the top to bottom. Why? Because the pasuk says Mishmur Ra Lo Yivra. He's not scared of any bad tidings. Matam. Why? Because not Chaliva B'Torah Hashem. Because his heart is confident, his heart is strong. He believes in God. Mesefer L'Resh Midrash and Megedash from the bottom to the top. The same thing. Not only B'Torah Hashem. Somebody whose heart is strong and confident in their bench. Mishmur Ra Lo Yivra. He won't be afraid of any bad tidings. Fine. There was a student who was a student of Rabbi Shmuel. He was walking by him. I'm sorry, Shmuel Rabbi Yasi. So who Talmud Davik Rabbi Yasi B'Shuka Tzien, who was a student of Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yasi, who was going after him in this market of the called Tzion. He saw that he was very afraid. He says, "You're a sinner." That's why you're walking around very scared. Right? The pasuk tells us that in Tzion they were afraid. They were against all their sins. So he says, but isn't it good to be afraid? Doesn't the pasuk say, praiseworthy is the one who's always afraid? If that's the situation of Torah. In other words, as Rashi explains, a person should always be afraid that he's forgetting his Torah, so he should always be studying and studying more. So, but I could tell that you're a sinner, right? So the Gemara gives another story. So I just mentioned here that we had a Gemara before on Zayin Beis. The Gemara told us before, it was Zayin Beis? Yeah, I think the Gemara before was on Zayin Beis. The Gemara told us there a Maisa situation where a person was also, the Gemara said, Muterless garis b'risham b'olam hazeh. It was mutter to mess around with Risham in this world. Shenam oisvei Torah yalu Rashi. You can start with Risham, but if somebody whispers, but don't mess around with the Rishon. Only somebody who's afraid, only somebody who's a sinner is going to say these kind of things. Meaning it's the same idea of somebody, letting on, right? This was his tell. You could tell what kind of person he is. Person walking around very nervous. You know what he's like. Okay? The same way that kol ha-paisel, right? So somebody who's walking around very scared of Averis, he's most likely a sinner. Okay, the only thing a person should be scared of is the fact that he's always forgetting his learning. Therefore, he should always be chazering over again. All right, so it says the Gemara. So Yehuda Bar Nasan have a shock of Azal Basri Rav Nuna. He was going after Rav Nuna Esnach. He started sighing. Amalei Yisurim Boy. All right, Ahu Gavra Lasuya Nafshe. So Rav Nuna says, "What does this guy, meaning this guy Yehuda Bar Nasan, you want Yisurim? Why are you sighing so much?" I think that was afraid of came upon me. Says Yehuda Bar Nasan, but isn't it great to be afraid? So he says, if that's with regards to Divrei Torah, not to be just randomly afraid. No, by Divrei Torah you'd be afraid, but not in general. And if you remember, we just literally had the Gemara in Chesed Beis, where the Gemara told us that somebody who sighs, it's mamish destroying a person. Or the other man says, Rabbi Yochanan says, right? So you shouldn't be walking around sighing. Yes, you should be sad or scared about your lack of Torah knowledge, so that forces you to learn more, but not about in general things. All right, we'll have to stop there.